is our second webinar in the series where we are looking at men's health, mental health in particular, because a lot of focus has been on our physical health, and we run and we go to the gym and we do all of this. But a lot of attention has not been focused on men and their mental health. In our last webinar, we looked at creating a safe space for our men and our young boys to have that conversation. And today, because we would have started that conversation in our last webinar, today we would like to address the empowerment and the strengthening and how it is we assist the younger generation of men in how it is that to accomplish and to reach their goals and to be active members of our society. So we have a very distinguished panel of gentlemen and Dr. Edwards Carr, who will by now introduce themselves. So we invite the panelists to introduce themselves. So we will start with the rose. Dr. Edward Carr.
Okay. I'm glad I'm the rose. Usually something else, but tonight I have no problem being the rose. My name is Dion Edwards Kerr. I am colleague with Dr. Gentles as Deputy Dean for Research and Resource Mobilization in the Faculty of Humanities and Education. I'm an educational researcher and has long since been involved in boys' education.
We are moving to the next. Mr. Jason, how are you? Miguel?
Oh,
Mr. Ison. He's Mr. Ison, sorry.
Sorry, my
That's
bad.
okay. Yeah, no.
I didn't realize I was Jason also. All right, thank you. I am Miguel Ison. Just for a brief moment, I was Jason. But, I am originally from the Isle of Spice, Grenada. I am married to a Jamaican woman, so that's why I now live in Jamaica. I am a science educator. Have taught all the sciences several years at different levels, primary, secondary, tertiary. And I am a father of 2 children, 1 boy, 1 girl, and like you heard already, husband of 1 wife. And I have been involved in education for many, many years. And so my perspective today, I guess, will have to do with sharing from the perspective of an educator, as a father, but also as a Christian. I will share some views from those 3 perspectives.
Thank you so much. Can we go now to Mr. Myrie? Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, moderator. Good afternoon to everyone, to the panelists, as well as everyone online at this point in time. My name is Dave Myrie. I'm principal of Kingston College. And as you know, my attention may be divided a bit now as we're in the middle of champs. So I'm sure everyone can understand that.
Yeah.
I know Jordan made a hit at me yesterday, but we'll get to that. Previously, I was also principal of Wolmer's Boys for a number of years. Spent time in the private sector also, and spent quite a few years within the education sector in Britain, where I was born, working for both Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea in the education department, Royal London Borough of Wandsworth, London Borough of Hampstead and Fulham, as well as London Borough of Hackney. So I've been around education for quite a while, but my real passion is our young men, because we talk about them being marginalized, and what happens for them is how we can help them. So that's my real passion, working with our boys.
Thank you, Mr. Myrie. And we go now to Dr. Peter Weller.
I am not sure if he is on yet. I don't know what's happened to him. So perhaps we could go to Mr. Jordan Williams while we're waiting.
Mr. Williams. Mr. Jordan Williams. Great.
Okay.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good afternoon to the panelists and all our participants here today. My name is Jordan Williams, and I'm currently a student at the University of the West Indies, and I'm studying digital media productions. I'm also the winner of the 2024 Mr. Humanities competition, and Mr. Myrie is here, and bring up the fact that I'm a past, Calabar student. And fun fact, I'm past head boy, so I can't, especially during this week, But I'm coming from the perspective of being a young man and understanding the challenges that we face, as well as from a leadership perspective where I had the opportunity to share and help to mentor young men at my school. So I'm happy to be here and to share with you all.
Thank you so much, all the members of the panel. And as we will move a little forward while Dr. Weller chimes in. But what we found out in the last webinar is that the men hardly speak about the mental challenges and how they should overcome them. And we realized from that session that our men or boys are not talking about what is troubling them. So we'd like to open the conversation to the panelists to speak about some of the issues that they have encountered with the generation that's coming, because this generation of boys, from my understanding and my experience, they have the internet, they have social media, they have numerous challenges that men my age, we were not faced with those challenges. And you'd hear their mothers from the last forum, the mothers complain about not being able to reach them because either they're on their phones, they are playing games, they are distracted by one thing or the other. And some of them have not focused on their academics as well. And as such, we, in this forum, we are trying to assist the mothers, the single mothers, with how it is they can reach their sons, their nephews, the young ladies or the sisters, the aunts, on how it is they can empower, how it is that they can better understand, and how they can support these young men. So, Mr. Myrie, as a principal, what is your experience with given that you're a principal of an all-boys school, how do you overcome some of the challenges that you face on a daily basis at Kingston College?
Thinking about all the challenges, I might need some help myself mentally to deal with all of that. Now, in a school of 2,000, almost 2,000 boys, and I also say that some of the issues that I'd said I experienced here at Kingston College may be no different from what I experienced at Wolmer's Boys as well. It's about where the challenges do come from in the first place. And the challenge for many of our students may flow from various areas. It may be academic pressure, the whole pressure of needing to do well academically. It could be pressure of parents pressuring them. You need to get good grades. You need to do whatever else. They feel they're not living up to that, and that creates major issues for those kids, and that has to be dealt with. Maybe pressure of financial constraints, because there's some kids who, for example, the financial situation within the home is such that they're not even able to get the additional books and things that they need for school. So they come to school feeling inadequate. And that leads into other issues for those kids, particularly if there's work they need to be doing outside of the classroom at home. They haven't got the resources to do it. They're coming back, they're getting into problems having done that. Then there are issues there. Massive one that they deal with all the time is the whole issue of peer pressure. And as you know, that one is just, it takes a very strong individual to withstand peer pressure, all right, because everybody wants to be part of the group, and there's also a pecking order within the structure as well. And there are many kids who have difficulty responding to that. And so as far as they're concerned, their peer is more important to them than even listening to what a parent has to say to them, or even what a teacher has to say to them. It's about living up to their peers, and it's how to get through to them with that particular issue. Then there are other kids who suffer from major disciplinary issues and behavior patterns that have to be addressed within the school. That poses its own problems as well for these kids. A massive one also is, how do a youngster balance being involved in extracurricular activities within the school and also actually keeping up academically and doing the work that's done? Because the unfortunate thing is that a teacher isn't given any leeway for a youngster, despite being involved in competitive sports or whatever it might be. They're expected to do the same work as any other boy in the class and get on with what is going there. I came across a number of times where youngsters want to be accepted in a particular group, but for whatever reason, they're not accepted in that group. And that's a major issue for them as well. And so on a day-to-day basis, I'd say we've encountered all sorts of different struggles. I've had to deal with youngsters who are actually contemplating suicide. And you have to walk through that. Yes, we have the guidance counselors and they have the programs that they do. But what I've found with many of these youngsters is that the biggest issue for them is having a space to be able to talk to someone, having someone that will be willing to listen, giving them the space to talk. And it's also not about trying to impose on them your views, allowing them to speak to you and tell you how they feel, what are the situations they're experiencing, and what needs to be done. I'll give you a classic example of this. There's one morning, I walked out of school. I generally just walk down the road, see where the boys are, talk to them on the street and saying, gents, hurry up and get into school. And I walked down the road, down North Street, heading towards the St. George's side of North Street. I came across a youngster and I said to him, you know, why are you this late and why are you walking as if there's nowhere to go? And his response was, I felt inappropriate on the street. And I said, it makes no sense for me to get into a whole discussion with him here. I said to him, get into school, get to my office. I'll speak to you when I get there. All right. I continued my walk all the way down. I came back to school, came up to my office, and the young man was there. I called him in. I said, you know, sit down, let's talk. He sat down and I said to him, you know, that response that I got from you on the street seemed totally at odds and inappropriate. What's going on? Let's talk about what's going on. He first sat without saying much. I said, no, I want to know what's going on. See, how can I help you? And then he opened up. He said to me, sir, I want to kill my stepmother. And I said, what? And he said, yes. I said, so tell me, what's wrong? What's going on? And he said, sir, my mother and father have broken up. Mother is gone. My father has now taken on a new partner and who has come with 2 daughters. And everything I do in the house is now wrong. My father has now gone against me. He's supporting his new partner and his new partner's daughter. And I feel left out. I have no voice in the house and I want to kill my stepmother. And I said, my God, yeah. I buzzed my guidance counselor and said, look, I need to have a quick chat with you about this. I had a quick chat with the guidance counselor. And I said, let's call the father in because we need to have a discussion with dad. I called dad and he said, Mr. Meyer, I'll come in right away. And he came down. And I spoke to dad about what his son had said to me. And the dad broke down crying. And he said, Mr. Myrie, what he said to you is absolutely true. I'm not giving him the attention, and you know, I'm being pushed to do things to him that I don't want to do. Every day I hear it's a complaint about him, etc., etc., etc. From there, we could actually move, got him professional in help, and he was able to resolve the situation. And I asked myself, what if I had bawled that boy out on the street when I felt his response was inappropriate and not find out what was going on? I wouldn't have known that there's this whole mass of stuff sitting right there for this kid. Now, this kid couldn't be learning with all of what was going on for him. And I tell you even further what happened. It got to the point that this same young man, after all of that, I put out a document and he looks at it and he calls me and said, sir, can I come and speak to you? I said, fine. And he comes and says to me, sir, I think that document could be better done than the way it is. And I said, okay, fine, I have no problem with that. And he would go away, virtually rewrite the document, take the document back to me and said, here it is. Now, I said to myself, you know something, that outcome is what I feel good about. Now, that's just one of many boys who are experiencing all sorts of issues. And I said, the issues may be from academic pressure, it may be from pressure at home, it may be from financial pressure, etc., etc., etc. We deal with that on a day-to-day basis, and we just have to always find solutions. And I find that making myself available and open for them to feel free to come and talk to me is a major start, because there's an issue I call talk therapy, because many times just allowing them the space to talk, to tell you what's wrong, all right, is a major thing, because for some of them, they feel like nobody listens to them, all right? They have no voice, nobody listens to them. They're always being told what to do, and nobody takes on board what they're saying. And for me, you know, I say at the end of the day, every single one of those boys must have a voice, and every single one of them must have their opinion, and I want to hear it, even if it's at odds with what I believe. I want to hear what they have to say, because it's actually very, very important. Again, as I said, we have guidance counselors who are involved, but there are times a youngster may say, I don't want to talk to a guidance counselor. And moreover, the other issue I have as well is that I have predominantly a high percentage of female teachers. And as far as some of these boys are concerned, they feel the teacher may not understand them as boys and what it is their mindset is and what needs to be done. And to even counter that, you know, about 2 or so years back, I got involved with a group called the Gurian Institute, and it's all about the minds of boys, how boys should be taught. And to the point that I brought them down to Jamaica and to actually train my staff about, you know, how to deal with boys, how to teach boys, because many times we teach boys from our own perspective, which is very different from them in terms of what they're looking at, their experiential background, what needs to happen for them. And so there's just so much there that we need to do, because ultimately, if we're talking about learning, there's no way the kid's going to learn if he has a whole parcel of baggage sitting on that needs to be dealt with, all right? And until we understand that, can unpick that, help them to deal with that, then there's no learning that's going to take place. And I tell you this, no 2 days are alike. Every day you can come upon another problem that you just have to deal with. And you just have to be able to sit down with those youngsters, be able to talk to them, and also be cognizant of what resources are around to help them. Oral Boys Network in Casey, for example, even from a simple thing, they provide scholarships for over maybe up to about 7 million in scholarship or more every year. That helps, because the scholarship they give also allows for, after issues expenditure in school, and a parent needs to get even a pair of shoes for the boy, that parent can pull down from that fund and get a pair of shoes for their son to ensure that that child comes to school. And so the various things that are done in here to ensure that our boys remain on track and on target is significant and wide. But, you know, bottom line is they need to have a voice and they need to feel they're being heard.
Thank you. You have said a lot. And one of the things that you spoke to in your opening remarks was that you yourself might need some mental health. And I find that a lot of men who have gone through their own struggles, their own trials, and they have accomplished, or they are in whatever field they are, they have overcome the challenges that they have encountered. But what the boys don't get from their mentors, principals, pastors, fathers, is how it is they go through the weak areas of their lives, how it is they overcome.
Mhm.
Because to start to dissect a problem and then to find a solution for it when all you see around you are strong men becomes another problem. We now have Dr. Weller on, so we are inviting him to introduce himself and to present what he has to offer to us for this forum.
Afternoon, everybody. Good to join the group again. Always a very vibrant discussion. And our principal just went through a narrative that reminds us how complicated this thing about living is, especially as men and especially as young men. So it's a lot of issues. Let me just kind of share some thoughts first, and pick up on a couple of the points made a while ago that I think are really critical. Okay, I'm a clinical psychologist, so I'm a psychotherapist, but my primary work has been in public health and health promotion. So I go between doing therapy and counseling to designing programs and doing mentoring programs, et cetera, et cetera. And I try to bring to those programs my understanding of what's going on as the principal said, in the deeper level. You know, what are the underlying stories? You see the behavior, you see the problem, but what's driving it? Actually, this year is 20 years since we founded the Caribbean Male Action Network. Started here at UWI after a conference that I put on, and it became a space which very much mirrors what was being identified a while ago as a space that is needed for men to talk. Not to preach at each other, not to try to convert each other, but to hear each other. You know, the vision and mission was let's get as many, no, this is before DIE and diversity and all of those words were so cliche. This was about saying all Caribbean men have a voice. We have a perspective. If we want to solve these social problems, let's put it all together and see how we do it. A Muslim group might do it differently, but they're still dealing with the same problem that a Christian, an older group, some teenagers, whatever it is, let's approach this in a multifaceted way. It really was very productive initially in terms of bringing together men across the Caribbean, and particularly men who were working with youth. So we did a lot of work with coaches and parenting and so on, to try to address just that issue that was raised again a while ago, which is you see men succeeding, but you don't understand the journey. And one of the great areas of impact we got across the board when we evaluated our programs was that the young men most valued hearing how men coped with failure, how they dealt with hard times. They didn't want to hear how many goals they scored in Manning Cup and whether they did this and that. They wanted to hear what happened when a girl broke their heart, or their father beat their mother, or whatever it is that was from. They wanted to hear those stories. And I think that that speaks to what was mentioned earlier about why it is so important for us to create those spaces. Now, unfortunately, with Caraman, it has evolved into a far more structured organization with membership and rules and affiliations that I think have taken it away from its essence, which is that creative space for problem solving and for self-awareness. And so I fully agree that this is an area that we need to look at. Now, a couple points around that. So what does this mean about how we're approaching these problems? At KC, at JC, at Wolmer's, George's, Mouchette, wherever we're talking about, everybody's doing their best. But I think one of the things that we're not doing is using the resources. So mention was made of one institute that was brought to do training, but there's a tremendous amount of resources available, workbooks, videos, etc., about how to talk to young men, how to work with youth, how to move them on a change process. And I think that's something that we really need to find a way to be more strategic about in Jamaica and in the Caribbean. We have developed local resources. The problem is that very often they're developed with support, and we're grateful, even though it's not so much available anymore from USAID, UN Women, UN AIDS, all these different organizations. But they end up in the cloud. They end up in folders, and the people on the front line don't have a chance to try to use them. And this is a problem because these topics that we want to talk about, again, as has been mentioned before, are not easy topics. You know, the problem with the gender dynamics in terms of our welfare and guidance counselors, well documented. People working really hard, the women who are in those roles. But when you're 15, 17, 19, 12, and you want to talk about wet dreams, and you want to talk about the older woman who wants to have sex with.
Muted.
Dr. Weller, your mic is muted. Not sure if you're hearing me.
Wow, when did it mute?
Not too long ago.
Oh, I didn't see
Not
that.
too long. Not too long.
All right. Well, the point I'm getting at here is there are a lot of resources out there, and those difficult conversations we need to have can be guided by those resources. Creating spaces for these conversations sometimes require having a topic, showing a video, and then letting people respond to the video, talk about what they think, what they feel. And you know, the peer pressure, which was mentioned, can be addressed in that way. So one-on-one counseling, talk therapy, rapping, whatever it is helpful. But when you get a group of young men together and they look at something and they say, well, I think this, no, I thought that, here's why I would do this, here's what I would do. You can begin to get insights and you can begin to create some consensus of the way forward. So point number one, we need more of these spaces, whether they're virtual or live. Point number two, there are a lot of resources available to guide those difficult discussions, especially when there might be a barrier that might be an age or gender a dynamic that gets in the way of people feeling comfortable talking. And doing it in groups, I think, is very important in a non-threatening way. So you don't send somebody as punishment. It's seen as part of their personal development, part of what they need to do. Change in behavior is very difficult. Not everybody can have a therapist, not everybody can have a counselor or psychiatric medication or family therapy, etc. But I think there's certain basic principles we need to think about, and I want to make this point as well. One, very often when we think of doing an intervention, we immediately start to tell somebody what they should do, teach them a skill. You need to count to 10, you need to do a timeout for your anger management. You need to practice affirmations, etc. But the problem with that very often is that we're starting too far down the road. If we don't provide the knowledge and information that people have, if they don't understand how the mind works and why certain things happen automatically, that is natural. If they don't have any kind of insight into what is happening in their lives, what is triggering their reactions, why are they automatically reacting with fear or anger? If they don't connect those dots, then when they try to practice those strategies and skills we teach them, it's not going to happen because the emotion is too roiled up. The insight is not there and they get automatically triggered, and then they don't really succeed in what they're trying to do. So again, when we create these spaces and we have these conversations and the young men begin to understand how their mind works and how they're responding automatically in ways that other people might not, then when we move to the point of trying to get them to practice healthier behavior, we're probably going to be more effective. But it's a mindset that we need to have, those who are in influential positions, so that we don't lecture or throw only information, or you don't only just try to teach some strategy or skill, but we help the young men to really integrate what they're trying to do into their own identity and self. So I use the acronym IRI. You give information. That's when you show the video, you do the talk, and people share information and stuff. You give an opportunity for reflection. So what does this mean to me? What does this remind me of? How am I feeling when I'm hearing this? What is this all about in my life story? And after the reflection, then you have to integrate. It's like, okay, I realize now I need to try this, do this, but I also know that I'm feeling this way and that way. Because we live in a world of and we have to negotiate between these parallel parts of our lives. So we give information, we give an opportunity for reflection, we give an opportunity for integration, and then we make it more likely that when they experiment or experience whatever we're trying to get them to do, they won't automatically slip and slide when things don't go right. They will understand, okay, this is triggering that, and that's why I'm feeling like I don't want to try it, or I'm feeling insecure, and I know where that's coming from, so let me stick to it. Let me keep going. I think there's some basic concepts that we need to be using as we continue to try to empower young men. And that particular concept is very empowering if it becomes a cognitive frame of reference when somebody's trying to make a change in their life. You know, I said I began with a lot of work in the area of therapy and counseling, and then I went more into health promotion and wellness. And while this is the 20th anniversary of of the launch of Caraman, today is actually also the 20th anniversary of having a massive heart attack that had to be resuscitated 3 times. And so I'm celebrating 20 more years of being alive. And I'm sharing that personal issue because as a man, it's amazing how in those 20 years I have not taken care of myself the way you thought I would have, having come so close to ending my life. So I'm making a very specific gender dynamic here now issue, because I think we as men do not take care of ourselves. We are programmed to survive, to push forward, to, you know, be courageous, champions, blah, 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 all of that stuff. And we don't attend enough to all the dimensions of our wellness. Yes, physical is something we pay attention to maybe, but not so much the emotional, not so much the interpersonal. Spiritual varies, occupational. I mean, they're all dimensions that we need to see as part of ourselves. So I'm ending on that note because as we try to provide new frames of reference for young men as they evolve, it is about understanding the importance of relationships, context, peer pressure. It's about understanding how your mind works and how you can make mindset shifts. But it's also understanding that you are a sum of many parts. And if you understand that about yourself, you can take care of yourself better. And if you understand it about yourself, you can be more impactful on those around you. So I'll share those preliminary thoughts, some of the issues, and end with the point that, you know, if we're going to deal with all of these uncertainties that are around us now, we have to stay in balance. And to stay in balance requires whole life balance, not work life, school life, whole life balance. And that whole life balance means that you have to do what I call the inward reach, self-awareness, the outward stretch, personal growth. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Weller. You have given us a lot to chew on, a lot to think of. But we are here for, we should be here for an hour and a half, Dr. Gentles. What we are trying to bring to the fore is how it is we as adults, as mothers, as brothers, sisters, uncle, understand this generation. And Dr. Weller alluded to it, and Mr. Myrie, because what I find is that a lot of men tend to, men and boys, I could speak more widely, people not understanding who they are and where it is we are going to start from understanding young men in this era. In this era, where do we start? Where does a mother, a single mother, starts engaging to understand her 12-year-old son or 9-year-old son? How does she start that conversation? How does that mother undertake a boy who is going through puberty, not understanding the changes in his body, the changes that he's undergoing in his body, in his surroundings, and all that comes with moving from boyhood to manhood. Where do they start? We need to have that conversation. For the persons who have chimed in, there are a lot of theories about coping, how it is mental health should be addressed, and how it is we go about it. But it's all theory. In one of my experiences, a practitioner said to me, the theory is the theory, but in reality, the theory doesn't matter. When I'm grieving, I can't think about fight or flight. I have to cope with the loss of a loved one, and the theory is not what comes to mind. So here we'd want to help persons who don't know how to reach the generation that is coming up in the age of internet and social media, and they are competing with their peers because when you go to all boys schools, you encounter competitive situations, whether it be sports. Now it's champs, and you're finding JC competing against Calabar, Kingston College, and that adrenaline that comes with all of that. How do we as adults engage them on a level where we say, this is what you need to do. This is how you go about it. This is wrong, or I went through this and I solved this problem this way. Maybe you don't have to solve it the way that I solve it, but you can take another approach. Stop, think, assess, and then solve. How do we communicate this to Dr. Edward Scar, who has one son, two sons? How do we, as a female, as males, tell her how to bridge the gap between her son and herself? Jordan?
Hello, once again. So, I've been listening in and I've been thinking, and as it relates to myself being a young man and literally experiencing these challenges, it brought me back to a point in time where I was having a conversation with my mother. I was probably say around 8, around that age, where she pulled me to the side. We're having a conversation, and she was saying, "You're not going to have a father anymore." So something to that effect. So you're not going to be seeing your father anymore. And with all this conversation, it made me remember that moment, and I cried. At that age, I cried. I to be honest, I don't know why I cried, but I cried.
What age were you, Jordan, at the time?
I was around age 8, age 9, thereabout. I believe she was having some challenges with him and such like that. So in essence, she just kind of wanted to get him out of the picture, and that was her way of conveying that to me. But as I said, I cried and I felt so emotional during that period. But what she said after that was that you can talk to your uncle and you can talk to your granddad. And I've just been so thankful for my family, speaking from the experience with my family life and, my upbringing. I'm thankful to my granddad for being in my life, because I grew up in a family where it was just female. So my aunt, my mom, my sister, my grandmother, right? And my granddad was the only male in the home. So, he taught me everything that I need to know. He was a pastor. So, he taught me everything that I need to know, just in general, understanding what it is to be a man. And he has reached an age, where he can't really do much So he looks to me and say, George, you are the man of the house now, you know. So it is through that learning and his teachings of a male figure, say, being present in the household, that I can stand here today and say, I am the man who I am because of him. And I said that to say, we're speaking of single mothers, you know, raising their sons. And I believe that while they're strong and they can do it, I believe that a male presence, whether it be an uncle, a grandfather, or, you know, even a friend that you know that is solid, should offer some guidance, because perhaps they may find a safe space within that male figure and can speak to them about certain things, and they can also relate. Being a female, it's hard to understand what a young man may be going through in that space of time. And another moment that occurred to me in high school, because I went to Calabar High School, and they had HFLE up to, say, grade 8. I think one of the big things for me, I wish they more spoke about, say, you know, understanding, say, sexual engagements and such like that. But we had conversations on that topic. And I remember the HFLE teacher at the time, you know, he was saying that wet dreams are normal, man, and all of them stuff there. And to an extent, I was wondering, what is he talking about? And through having that conversation and him being open with us and, you know, reasoning with us, you know, it just created a space where we could have said, so, sir, this happened and this happened. So how we work with that? You know, we talk about girls and stuff like that. So I feel like, you know, pooling resources towards teaching our young men at a tender age how it is that, you know, they're supposed to do certain things and go about their daily living. I feel like that is very essential. And I feel like a mentorship program should be essential in all schools to guide young men and even women so that they are aware of what is ahead, even though it's unpredictable, but they can get some sort of guidance as to, you know, living their lives.
But Jordan, let me ask this question. How do you, I don't know your present age, but when you're in high school, to go to see the guidance counselor with your peers around you, you tend to not feel comfortable going to see a guidance counselor. And added to that, you said you had your family who provided some sort of support. How was that support given? Did you go to them to say, okay, my dad is not in the home anymore, so I need a father figure? Or is it that they came to you? How did that interaction occur?
Okay, so basically that interaction occurred throughout my upbringing. It wasn't a time where I said, hey, you know, my dad isn't here. It was as I grew, because I'm 21 years old now, and, you know, that conversation happened, you know, at age 8, around that time. So, you know, as I was growing and, you know, trying to understand myself and find myself, you know, certain things my granddad would, you know, teach me, you know, understanding that as a man, you take care of certain things, taking out the trash. You know, my mom don't touch the trash and all of these things. I take care of that. And just in general, you know, standing up for myself and being someone that can lead. And I feel like that transcended into my Calabar years, especially serving as head boy, right?
I appreciate the standpoint from which you you present, but I'm going to invite Dr. Carr to give us from a mother's perspective. Dr. Carr?
Okay. I am not sure my perspective will line up with everybody else's, but I'll put it on the table. My colleagues are used to the very far afield where I'm coming from. So I'm listening to the conversation, and, you know, within Jamaica and the Caribbean, we work within this idea of a deficit within our family structures. That because X person is not there or another person is not there, we have a deficit, and the deficit makes our families dysfunctional. Jordan just pointed out something a while ago of the importance of the extended family and how that helps to provide a ring, a set of guardrails around our children, and especially when you have the uncles and the granddad who can be there to stand with, you know, a mother and an aunt, because sometimes it's mother, aunt, and grandmother raising these children. Okay, so this is where my positionality now. I was raised by a single father. My mother left my father when I was 2 years old. And so my father raised me as a single man, right? And I often ask myself, now, if my father, Mr. Edwards, could raise a daughter like me as a single man, then why can't a single woman like me raise a son like my father, who was, as far as I know and understand, other people may say differently, he was accountable, kind, fair, forthright, and by forthright, I really mean feisty, entrepreneurial, forward-thinking, and very productive. Over his lifetime, he owned 7 businesses while trying to raise a little girl. And one of the things I know and I saw him do was to call on other people. So when he didn't know or understand something, he would call somebody and say, for example, he was very good friends with Dr. Keen, and he would say, oh, she's 12, you know, and I don't understand how to do this. So I'm going to ask you how to explain this whole period thing to her and all of these things. So it was another gentleman who explained that to me. So how have I dealt with raising a son? My son is 15 years old, and I chose to raise him as a single mother. It's a choice that I made, and it's a choice I do not regret. There are many, many challenges. Many challenges.
Do you feel equipped though? Do you feel equipped?
If I feel equipped, no, this is what I do. I did exactly what my dad did. I call on other people. I'm not afraid to ask for help. So I call for Uncle so-and-so. You know, this is an issue. I don't know how to deal with that. I don't know how to explain that. I never had that experience. Can you sort this out? And I will ask other persons. Even I have a very good friend, you know, Joan, who has stood with me on a lot of things.
Do you have a village?
You know? Yes, I have a village. I have a village. And so if something is wrong, I will call on other people. Now, because I understand accountability from Mr. Edwards, one of the things I enforce with my son is accountability. Because, and so I will throw him under the bus if he's wrong. So he understands that if he's wrong at something, I'll throw him under the bus. But if he's right, I'll go to the rug for him. I will protect him. But if he's wrong, definitely not. I do find that...
Accountability and truth, right?
Go ahead. I didn't get that.
Accountability and truth.
Accountability and truth, definitely. I do find that structure is very important. He responds well to structure. And if the structure is there, he will work with the structure, right? And he has all sorts of attitudes. But once a structure is there, I usually say to my friends after 3 days, once the structure is in place, he falls in line by the 4th day when he realizes that I'm not backing away from this structure, right? After COVID, my son put on a lot of weight. And I put him in swimming, right? Not soccer, not football, and not track or whatever. I put him in swimming because that was one of the things that was open during 2021, August 2021. And the structure of having to go every day and the structure in the social relationships, and particularly, I will tell you, dealing with girls, being around the young ladies and knowing that you're all in the pool, you're all dressed to swim, but you can't touch these girls and you can't be rude to them. And so the structure of that, I think, has helped to wire his brain in a particular way in terms of how you handle yourself, how you socialize with other people. And again, that has become, the swimming community has become part of my village. And so as I go along, Samari is part of my village, by the way. My son is one of his ward, his students. So if I have a problem, at some point I'm gonna get in touch with him, right?
I must ask for Dr. Carr.
Yes.
Sorry to interject, but I must ask. Your son is 15. I would
Yes.
imagine that he is probably growing tall, looking across at you.
He's 6 feet.
He's 6. So you're looking up at him.
6'1". I'm looking up at him, yes.
Okay. There are situations that I've heard of where mothers are being challenged by their boys, by their
Yes.
sons. The mother will raise a hand and the boy holds that hand. Maybe that's not your experience, but that becomes a big issue for a lot of females, and they're not equipped physically or mentally to challenge a testosterone-filled young man.
And the testosterone field is correct. I used to teach at Cornell College when in my very first teaching experience was at Cornell College. I used to teach the Costa Cup boys who are in 6th form. And they were taller than me. There was a step outside of the classroom, a series of steps going upstairs. And in order to talk to them, I don't know where I got this from, to be honest with you, as a young girl. To have the conversation with them, I would say, you stand at the bottom of the stairs and I will stand at the top of the stairs. And that's when I talk to them. So I am not looking up to them. If you understand me, they're having to look up to me. And
Okay.
the thing I
Changing the power dynamics.
Yes. I recognize that this boy had grown 5 inches in 3 months. And that he was, because of the swimming, he was also strong. His upper body is very strong. So I don't raise my hand at him. I try to understand the mind space that he's in. Sometimes I don't understand it. And I realize that one thing I have to do sometimes is keep quiet and back away and come back to the situation, because he can escalate the situation on me faster than I can de-escalate.
Pretty quickly. Thank you. I'm gonna segue from that point into Mr. Essen, because spirituality, from the standpoint of Mr. Essen as a Christian, growing up, I had to go to church and I had to go to Sunday school, and I was raised in a community where the village raised a child. But in this era, you find the church playing a lesser role in the lives of boys, because it's not so much embedded in our culture anymore, where boys have to, or girls must go to Sunday school or to church. So, Mr. Essen, how do we bring that back, where the discipline is instilled and the spiritual values are passed on to our boys?
Okay, greetings everyone. Just before I respond to that, I want to just endorse the issue of community that was shared earlier. There's an African phrase, I think it's called Ubuntu, which says, I am because we are. And so the idea of community. And so I want to say that here for whether you are a single mom or a single dad, raising boys or raising girls, whatever the case might be, is that we have to remember there is power in community. And that God never made us to live in isolation. You know, we saw that there was Adam and there was Eve. There was always community. And we see even within the Bible, there's the idea of the Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. So the idea is that we're not supposed to be isolated, which results in insulation, but rather we have to seek to socialize and to reach out. Right. So typically in most Caribbean countries, growing up, the church was, central in our upbringing. Very often back in those days, maybe parents would send the little ones to church and Sunday school or Sabbath school, as the case might be. In recent days and recent years, I think because of influences from more developed jurisdiction, we've gotten to the place now where, though we still see Jamaica as a Christian nation, people no longer see going to church as something that is important. Even if we will admit, all of us, that there were lots of good values we got from going to church and being in church. So I think what has to happen in this day and age, we can no longer say to a child, to a boy, especially, you go to church and you stay at home. I think we have to model that which we want for our boys. So if we want our boys to have certain Christian values, which some circles are referred to as core values of honesty and integrity and compassion and empathy and so on, we cannot just say to a boy, you go to church and you stay at home and you watch football, right? You are modeling something that, so you're saying one thing with your mouth, we told that actions speak louder, than words. So we have to model whatever we want. So if we want our boys to be in church, if we want our boys to be part of certain groups where there is a good place for them to be grounded in some really good values, we have to be there with them, not just send them. They won't go, right? So that is an important thing for us to be in church with our boys and not simply just send them. Also, in communicating with our boys, we're reminded too in scriptures that it says, fathers, provoke not your children to wrath or to anger. And yes, we are the men of the house, and our boys will test us. We have to have boundaries. Boundaries are important for boys, but it will test us and see what's the limit of the boundary. How serious is daddy or mommy or auntie or uncle? And it will test us. And we have to ensure that, in as much as possible, we didn't anger them. So, for example, you never want to confront a male in the presence of his friends in terms of a sort of something that is putting him down, making him feel less than. I think the male psyche is very, very fragile, and when we feel offended or we feel dissed, we react explosively, violently. We go from 0 to
Egos.
100 quickly.
When the egos get off.
Yeah, the ego, So we have to ensure that if we are going to speak at all to our sons, to the boys in which, the boys that we care for, that we do it from a position of, mutual respect. And if we do that, we find that even if boys are less inclined to speak, because my son is not doesn't speak a lot. And most boys generally in classes are fairly quiet unless you get issues that boys like, whether it's sports or it's movies or it's games and so on, or girls, right? But you have to, so like even this morning, for example, in the car, we're heading to school and to work. And my son asked me just on the top of his head, how many push-ups can you do? Random, I wasn't even thinking about push-ups, And I said, boy, with my bad shoulder, and right now, not even one. And he smiled because, in his mind, he said, yeah, I can do more than one. But I shared with him a story of being in youth camp at church as one of the camp leaders and so on. And a young man asked me the very same thing. He says, how many push-ups can you do? And I said to him, I'm not sure. He said, sir, I can do 30. He's about 16 years old he was, and he got down and he did 30, got about 38 maybe, and he's tired, the bus couldn't go no more. And I said, wow, I hadn't done push-ups for a while. And I said, I can't make this little boy make me look bad. Yeah, yeah. So I got down and I did 50. He said, wow, he was impressed. But true to the male ego, he said, okay, sir, can you do push-ups in what's called a handstand? So his hand is on the ground, his feet up in the air against a wall. And he did 10. And I said, I can't even do the handstand.
He's challenging you.
Right. But at least though, there was a measure of respect that he got. And with the boys in class, I am very keen on building relationships. So I model fairness, I model integrity, but I'm also keen on building relationships. When you build relationships over time in the course of a semester, or with your son in the course of several years, they begin to get to the place where they can trust your words and they come to you. And we talked about the guidance counselors and they're important. But I think if as a father, if as an educator, we build a good rapport with the boys, they'll come to us. This evening after class was finished, one of my students here from UE, he said, sir, I'm having difficulty sleeping, you know? I mean, just out of the blue, you know? He says,
Yeah.
what do you think I can do to help me sleep better, right? And we talked about that. I had a student a couple of years back who tried to commit suicide, right? He tried, it failed, and we spoke. And since then, I've become like an unofficial mentor. There's nothing official about it. But today he's teaching at an all boys high school and doing exceedingly well. But he knows that if he struggles at all with work, issues with girls and so on, he can call me and we can talk, and there's no judgment. And so I think it's important for us as men to listen. You know, we are programmed meant to give solutions. And sometimes our boys, especially our own sons, we want to fix it. Sometimes it's not about fixing it. It's just being available and willing to listen. So as I
Being
circle
present.
back, yes, I circle back, I think therefore we need to be role models for our boys. The way we speak to our wives, the way we interact with female workers, the way we speak to our bosses. Your boss can call and you're pretending to be sick and your son is in the presence listening. He's watching that. He's seeing that, you know, how you treat your wife, right? It's very important because that's how he will then treat girls. And
Modeling.
so whatever we want from our boys, one, don't just send them to church, take them, and then we want to model to our boys what it means to be a man. And I heard this phrase today that says, we want to allow the boys to be men, not just boys who shave. Because lots of boys grow up to be boys who shave, never truly grow up to be men. So we want to help our boys to be men by modeling what it means to be a man. Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You raised the matter of respect. And I find that in different spaces, respect is interpreted differently amongst our boys. In the high schools, I've heard of stories where if you step on a boy's Clarks, that is a sign of disrespect. Back in the time when I was in high school, you didn't tell any boy about his mother because that was disrespect. Now it's about your Clarks. I talk about that's a diss. So how I'm gonna ask Mr. Myrie about this matter of respect and how do we translate what respect is to the next generation of boys. And after Mr. Myrie, we're gonna ask questions of our most active audience.
Hold on, Mr. Williams.
Yes,
I think Peter
Dr.
Weller's
Webb,
hand is
yeah.
up.
Yes.
Okay,
Oh, okay.
my apologies, Mr. Weller, Dr. Weller. Dr. Weller?
So, so
Sorry, I'm saying go ahead with Mr. Myrie, because that's a very important issue, that issue of respect among men. So I'd love to hear his response.
Mr. Myrie, you're muted.
Thank you. I was saying I would have loved to have heard Dr. Weller on the topic before I make any comment. But I think this whole issue of respect is to understand first what is meant by respect and what do they perceive as respect. Because stepping on a boy's clock, if that's disrespect, the understanding of respect, because that's just sometimes an innocent accident. Yeah. And I think this thing as I think is totally out of whack. So for example, I give you one or two examples. In COVID, during COVID, or towards the end of COVID, petering out, we started to have what we call staggered approach to school. So for example, we split the week up, we do it full online, but boys would come in Monday, Wednesday, Friday, another group would come Tuesday, Thursday. The next week, the group that came Tuesday, Thursday would come Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and so we're rotated like that. So then, where I sit, where Dave Barron would sit in the class on Tuesday when it would be my week, it may be the same seat that the guy who comes in on Monday, Wednesday, Friday has as his main seat. Now, when we all came back together as a class, little thought was given as to, hang on, the dynamics that would happen there. So now a youngster comes in, the seat he knows as his seat is now being used by somebody else. And to him, that's a big disrespect, that this guy's disrespected him and taken away his seat. When it was an innocent situation that the youngster would sit there when it was his days on to be in class. You have to be pacifying all of these kind of things. And my sense about this issue is that, you know, I have to teach him, what does respect mean? Yeah, what does respect mean? You know, because here's the thing, they talk about respect, but many of them, it's either their view, they're not necessarily tolerating any other views. And respect means allowing a person to have another view which is different from yours, and it's okay, all right? But disrespect has led to a lot of conflicts, or this disrespect as far as they see it, has led to a lot of conflict. And I think part of the whole thing is reorientating them as to what respect is all about. Yeah, it's not about whether or not I step on your clocks. All right, it's nothing to do with that. Respect is also about, I don't say anything disparaging about your parent, about your mother or your sister, or anybody like that. Yeah, I don't say anything disparaging about you as well. I allow you to speak. I allow you to say what you feel without getting up in your face and saying, shut up, you don't need to be saying anything. So I think that the whole issue of respect is all skewed for me as far as the perspective of students are concerned. And it's a matter of having to teach them, what do we mean when we say respect, or what is disrespect, all right? The other thing that I found, you know, that with our kids, which is also very difficult within both school and the home, what's wrong is what you get caught at doing. It's not that it's wrong that you shouldn't have done it in the first place. What's wrong is what you get caught at doing. And when you get caught at it, the issue is, drat, I got caught. Not that, my God, what I was doing was wrong in the first place. I shouldn't have been doing that. The issue about, how are you so stupid to have gotten caught at doing that wrong, if you like? And I think there's also the issue that a lot of our value systems are all warped. And you know, you see kids watch and see what we're doing. They see the value systems that we come up with, and they see with adults. Yeah, you know, a man in a party will stab somebody else, shooting because he said he stepped on his shoe in a party. That's the whole disrespect, and it has continued. And I think we have to change a whole of that kind of paradigm and reteach. I found that even social graces went during COVID. You had to start at the bottom when they're back in school to try and teach social graces, etiquette, being accommodating of other people, etc., etc., etc. So I think for me, the whole issue respect is all skewed, or disrespect is skewed, and we need to teach our kids really what is true respect and what does disrespect mean. I think the words mean something totally different from what I would have understood those words to mean when I was younger or when I was a child.
Thank you. Thank you. Can we invite our audience to chime in on issues that they might be having with their sons, with their brothers, uncles, fathers, younger brothers? Ms. Stevenson. Go ahead.
All right, good evening, everyone. It's just I have two questions. I have one question for Dr. Edwards Carr, and it's kind of flowing from something that that Mr. Myrie spoke to a while ago about him understanding his understanding of respect from when he's growing up, and how young men understand respect. I mean, as a mother, right? I kind of want to hear from her. How do you bridge the divide between when we were growing up and being told that we should be seen and not heard, and young men nowadays who feel like to say or to speak up and to say how they feel, it's not a sign of disrespect, but it is them feeling the need to have a voice. How do you manage that in a house where you're telling your son to, for example, go and move the fridge, and he's saying, but mommy, why should I move the fridge when the fridge is okay? Where is it? How do we manage? How do we navigate that? How do we navigate it as a sign of respect in the home? And I kind of wanted to ask, that's one question. And I wanted to ask Jordan as well. I mean, in his capacity as a student leader, and how, you know, how he engages young men. One of the things that we've heard throughout this conversation has been the issue of suicide. So I kind of wanted to hear from him in his conversations with young men. What are some of the reasons that they give for wanting to commit suicide? So those are my two questions.
Would you like me to go first?
Yes, Dr. Carr, please.
Okay. All right. So this business of respect, I think Mr. Myrie is quite right in many respects on the business of us teaching these things. I think it's very important. Even the business of controlling yourself and regulating yourself, it has to be taught. We somehow think that these children, like us, we didn't come here filled with all the knowledge that we have now. We grew into it, and we grew into practices that help us to survive, help us to live. And in the same way, in this 21st century that they're living in, where everything is so open and everybody has feelings and everybody must have their say, and I have my rights and I'm entitled, and you can tell I've heard it, right?
Yes.
Right? It's how do I as a mother negotiate with a 6-foot boy about taking out the garbage, right? And we heard Jordan said that's what he did. He took out the garbage, and that's something, for example, I say to my son, I have a daughter here. I don't take out garbage. My daughter is not going to take out the garbage. Your job, your chore, your responsibility is take out the garbage. And the honest truth is, I do go rogue on something like this where I say, you have to take out the garbage. It's non-negotiable.
What if he doesn't listen?
Well, if he doesn't listen, then the consequences are there, and my consequences are very real. So a consequence could be something that he loves very much is that he really likes to go to swimming. And if I say, if you're not moving that bin, Wednesday and Friday and not happening, it's not happening. It's not going to happen.
And that works.
It works, for example, and there's some things for me that are non-negotiable, and there are some things that we can work with. So my son is very social and he likes the party. So on the 29th, you have a party. You don't do what you need to do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. 29th is not happening.
Okay.
And that's non-negotiable. It's not, I'm not negotiating it. You're just not going. So if you want to go, you're going to have to do what you need to do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I think, and that's something I go rogue on, and I'm unapologetic about it, because he has to understand there are just some things that, and something is an ongoing battle. It is, and I make no joke about that. It's an ongoing battle, like reading the history book is an ongoing battle. You see what I'm saying? So how do I deal with that? I have to have a structure, I have to have a system. read these 2 pages, read half a page, write down the 5 things that you learn about that, and let's keep moving. And then you can come back 2 hours time and read another part of it. But it's an ongoing struggle with some things. And for me, it's at this point, not accepting the sense that you are entitled, you feel entitled to something, so you have to have it. You're not entitled. You're definitely not entitled to it.
Thank you.
And that is something we have to break. These feelings, everybody have feelings, and everybody have entitlement. And as this lady is saying, as Carisha is saying, you have to hold your ground. Sometimes it's just some things are just not moving on. And when he recognizes that I'm not budging on a certain thing, then he'll back down, as I say. And a very powerful tool, ladies out there, I'm going to share this one with you. I'm going to take this one out of the arsenal. Any man, silence.
Any man.
Once you put silence on it,
Okay.
and you don't talk, we don't talk. That's it. You know, once he's realized I'm not saying anything more, I'm not talking about it, I'm not asking the questions, say, okay, well, she's clearly serious. So he gets on with it.
Great.
If I can
Mr.
add
Williams?
one little
Mr.
thing just
Williams?
before he comes in, I can add one little
Okay.
thing here quickly. In terms of chores, I see them, well, I tend to use the word responsibility, right? And I tend to use the idea of adulting, training for adult life, so that, and it's also that we all have a part to play. So I said, if mom and I are doing the meals, then your job is to wash the wares, take out the garbage. We are contributing to the household. And I said, someday you'll go off on your own. You'll have to do all of these things. So it is really practice, is building capacity to become the leader of your house later in life, right? And if I say to him to throw away the garbage, you know, years ago I would demand it be done now, but I will negotiate and say, okay, you can finish do what you're doing. I'll give you 2 hours, but it has to be done tonight, right? I'm not going to, so there's a time I will say right now and begin to raise the voice and so on. That to me doesn't really work. You say, look, I want it done tonight. You can finish do what you're doing, but part of training to become a man is to take charge of the household and contributing in different ways. So for you at this stage in life now, it is the garbage to be thrown out, it's the dishes to be washed. I'd say at some point in time, you will do the cooking and I may throw out the garbage. But it is training for adulthood. It is preparation for life. So I'm trying not to use the idea of it's a punishment, it's a chore, it's a responsibility. I'm building capacity in you to become the man of your own house someday.
Thank you.
I would say, yeah.
But before Mr. Williams, before Jordan comes in, there's a question from Joshua Johnson. Mr. Johnson, can you go ahead? Your question?
Hi, good evening. It's actually Joshua's mom.
Okay.
So,
Hi.
yeah, so I would like, you know, the fact about, you know, boys becoming suicidal was mentioned earlier. And I would like to hear, you know, a little bit more on how to address the issue of suicide. So I have 2 boys, one is 19, one is 16, going 17. The 19-year-old has never mentioned suicide, but the younger one from a very early stage, maybe like 8, 9, 10, I started hearing him, if you scold him about something, he would say, I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to kill myself. And as a matter of fact, this started as early as probably about 4 years old. He did something and I was scolding him and he said to me, why don't you do to me what they did to Jesus Christ? And I said, what did they do to Jesus Christ? He said, nail me to a cross, crucify me. And then that spiraled into him constantly saying he would kill himself. And I remember when he was probably about 12 years old, I got very upset with him. And I said to him, if you want to kill yourself, just go and kill yourself. Go out on the highway, and when you see the vehicle that is going the fastest, just go and run in front of it. I never heard him. Yes, it was. I mean, I just lost it. I didn't know what else to do. And I've never heard him say it again. Now, about a year and a half ago, I said to him, Joshua, you used to tell me that you want to kill yourself. Do you still have those thoughts? He said, come on, mommy, do I look stupid? That's when I was a baby and didn't know anything. I said, are you sure? He said, yes. Mind you, we have not had the discussion since because I am still wondering how to continue speaking to him about the issue because I don't know if those thoughts have completely left him, if he has really matured and is no longer having those thoughts. So, how do you deal with a situation like that where your child used to mention suicide? He's now saying, I no longer have those thoughts because I only did it when I was stupid. How does a person or a parent deal with a situation like that?
Thank you. Dr. Weller, do you want to take this one? Dr. Weller, are you still on?
Yes, I'm still here. I'm just muted. This is a very challenging issue. And in fact, I have to tell you very honestly, I'm not comfortable talking about these things in group settings. You're speaking about your son. I don't know if his son is going to hear about this. His friends are going to hear about it, etc. But I can very well understand your concern. And even that you say it's not a current concern, I think it's something that we can look at. One of the things that comes to mind is that we live in a contemporary time where killing yourself doesn't have the same meaning it would have for many of us growing up. Many people who say they want to kill themselves are really speaking about a gesture of wanting to end a feeling that they're having or a state that they're in, more so than actually wanting to end their life. And this gives you hope because it means individuals may not be at as much risk, but it means that it's even more nuanced, trying to figure out, is this a cry for help? Is this an attention-seeking behavior, or is this really something that is risky to the person's life? So it's good that you've been able to engage, and I think that is one of the things that is so important. We very often are uncomfortable with the idea of somebody talking about self-harm and suicide, so we try to distract them or appease them rather than asking them more about what's going on, what the reasoning is, what they think they would achieve by doing that, and how have they coped before. Because one of the most important things is that if you have suicidal ideation, you've probably had it for a while, but you've never acted on it. And there's a reason you haven't acted on it. There is something that's keeping you somewhat stable, giving you some amount of hope. And those conversations are important. I think the other piece and this is a really complex issue, so I'm really not thinking I can be comprehensive in my response. But the second point I'd want to make harkens back to the issue of the village. If you have somebody you're close to, and it might be a son, it might be whoever, who you think is suicidal or said they're suicidal, getting them help from somebody who they may feel comfortable talking to is an important step. Whether that is an older sibling, a cousin, uncle, aunt, mentor, neighbor, pastor, professional. It's always good to have that in mind and make that link in a gentle way, not in a way that I can't handle this, go and talk to them, but rather, okay, I'm going to share my perspective, but maybe it would be good to hear from Mr. So-and-so or Miss So-and-so, because they may have some expertise. So again, it's about engaging the village. The last point I'd make, that suicidal ideation is something that comes out of usually a mood disorder or some kind of trauma. And so there's some backpedaling that needs to happen. And sometimes we don't take seriously when our young people are depressed or sad. We say, oh, it's just teenagers, adolescents, puberty. And we don't get a full understanding that this may be something more than just a passing mood. And so again, it's about knowing your people, being close to and having conversations with and understanding when they say something that you can ask more. They don't want to tell you more than they want, but ask, what was that? Or you look that way. or I notice you said something, just ask. It's a simple question and it sets the stage that you are paying attention. Because very often people just want to know that somebody cares. And that is what will make a difference when the crisis comes about. So I think that's some thoughts I would share. Obviously, as a clinician, there's always work that can be done in terms of doing a suicidal assessment. And we have organizations in Jamaica, very good organizations. We have a hotline that provides support not only for people who are suicidal, but for people who are trying to help somebody who's suicidal. So the Choose Life Foundation, we have resources here, and that is something that we can be very proud of in Jamaica.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Weller. Jordan, you had mentioned in your initial presentation, and Ms. Stevenson had asked you the question as well. What are the reasons some of your peers give for wanting, when they say they want to commit suicide?
So for me, I haven't experienced, you know, a lot of the gentlemen saying that, hey, they want to commit suicide. Usually what happens is, you know, they come to me to the side and say, hey, this is what's going on. And at Calabar, at the time when I was there, we had a guidance counselor, Reverend Smith. And he was, you know, very easygoing, easy to speak with. So I feel, and another guidance counselor, Mrs. Jared, she is absolutely amazing with the gents. So I feel like a lot of the times, most of them would go to the guidance counselors. She also mentioned on the topic of, say, student leadership and respect. The idea is that, as was mentioned in the presentation, us men, we have fragile egos. So the smallest situation, if not handled properly, will blow out of proportion. And during my tenure as head boy, I've experienced a lot of that, you know, monitoring the lunch lines, simple things like somebody skipping somebody and they just flare up and, you know, start fighting. So simple things like that, I have to tell them to look at the bigger picture, right? Because you will go out of your way to, you know, cause all this eruption and fighting, being pulled out of the line and then going to the principal's office, looking at a suspension, all of that weighing on your conscience and, you know, permanently going on your record right there. So as it relates to, you know, respect, I believe that they should look at it from a broader perspective and lay out their options as to how they handle the different situations. But as for the committing suicide, I've never dealt with much of that. What I have actually dealt with personally is I was at Starbucks sitting down, you know, drinking coffee and doing my work. And out of the blue, somebody was crying on the table beside me as a young man. And he was looking at me and he was saying, can I just talk to you? I just want somebody to talk to. Crying and just saying, hey, I just want somebody to talk to. I think it was God that had put me in that place in that time, because in him talking to me, he was saying that, hey, I just want to walk out to the road right now and you know, make a car knock me over and I'm just dead. Too much stress and too much struggle. And there's a case where he was facing, you know, with his daughter and financial problems. And all he wanted to do was just to talk. All he wanted to do was just to talk. And I feel like in answering that committing suicide with young men, I feel like we should present the space for them to just talk. I feel like time and time again, we're trying to figure out the problem, figure out the situation. But I think we should just set aside some time and say, hey, let's talk. I feel like doing stuff as a family will help to boost that, just in general, going on walks, just freeing the mind and hope that a conversation will build there. Probably say, mommy, this has been happening, or this and that. So I feel like that's a way where, you could probably take an angle at the committing suicide.
So, you being a stranger to that gentleman in Starbucks, who initiated the conversation? You did, or the gentleman did come across to you?
He actually initiated the convo. I didn't really notice that he was crying, but because he was in crutches and whatever. I think he had just come off a call. I remembered him coming off a call, and then after that, it was him saying, "I just need a minute of your time. Just hear me out. That's all I want." He never asked for no money. He literally just asked to hear me out, and through that, I actually took his number and I linked up with my aunt, and because he was basically in a financial disposition, yeah. So I linked up with my aunt and I said, hey, he said that he's a chef. People in that industry, and she corresponded with him and they got a job interview, but I lost his number, so I really hope he's doing well right now. But yeah.
A lot of the conversation we've been having so far relates to Dr. Weller spoke to a couple of things, that the average person, the average boy on the corner, the average person the gentleman who doesn't have that family that they can have that conversation with. Where do they go? How do they tackle their own issues, their own problems? I remember having a conversation prior to coming on with a group of young ladies, and I was inviting them to join in, and they were at a loss as to how they could contribute to a conversation such as this. And I stepped back and I said, why it is that these young women feel as though they have nothing to offer to empower, understand, and assist with the next generation. And for the most part, they scrambled to find answers as to the role that they could play. And I was taken aback by it, and I don't know. I mean, I get the sense that people don't feel as though they are equipped to handle a strong man, because for the most part, men are supposed to be strong and they're not supposed to show weakness. So that becomes, in my mind, a challenge for females and for peers as well, as to how it is they go about. If they see a young man, I saw a young man at a funeral recently, and he was crying openly, looking at the casket, and I had to go over to him and embrace him at the side and ask him what it is he was going through, and he went in detail to explain that the person who had died had played a major role in his life, and he don't know how it is that he had gone. And I had to give him some encouraging words. But I get a sense, and from the previous webinar, that people don't feel equipped to.
Could I jump in at that point? I think
yes.
you're putting your finger on a very important point, and it's one of the post-COVID dynamics that is happening. People became detached and disconnected during COVID. Yeah. They became virtual. They text and they WhatsApp, which does not allow interaction. It does emojis don't say anything. And so it is a capacity that we are losing, and particularly among young people, to just engage and discuss and look at pros and cons and state a position. They've not had much experience with it. And when it comes to the difficult topics, it makes it even more challenging. So they don't have the language to articulate their emotions. They don't understand how to talk about trauma without talking about entitlement, etc. So I want to put that out there as something that I think is happening across the board. But if you see me, I want to connect that a little bit to some of the other things. When we talked about respect, and Dave Myers spoke about, needing to redefine it. When people say they've been disrespected, the question is, so what? You see, we don't ask that, so what? You've been disrespected, so what? What's the problem with that? And what I think we don't realize is for many people now, especially men and young men, it's about a risk, it's a vulnerability, it's a survival thing. If I am disrespected, then I can be disrespected further. If I'm disrespected further, well, you know where that can end. And we have to get into their minds to realize that stepping on his shoe or bouncing is not going to lead to somebody climbing over the fence and shooting him. But some people live in communities where that is a reality.
Yeah.
And so they have to go on bad because it is about survival. So again, we have to understand the underlying dynamics. Bringing up another one, when we talked about spirituality and the church, some very good points about how we need to learn. But guess what? If you're a single mother and you have a teenage son who's going to church and the church is telling him he's head of the household and man should be in charge of things, why do you think he's going to take out the garbage? Who are you to tell him to take out the garbage? God has said he should be the head of the household and he's practicing. So let me test. No, I'm exaggerating a bit. I'm sure you people understand, but that's the message in his mind. We cannot say we want the church to be more involved, and then the message the church is giving is sending conflicting information and causing cognitive dissonance, right? In fact, that young man may say, I want to take care of my mother, so I'm going to tell her what to do. It's not just that I don't want to take out the garbage, but I need to protect her. I need to show I'm strong enough to stand up to her. All of these psychological dynamics are so important if we're going to understand. So the conversations, everybody says we need to help people have conversations, but I think we need to understand how to facilitate those conversations. I think that is really where our emphasis needs to be, whether it is in the schools, whether it is the mentoring, whether it is rap sessions, whether it's done face-to-face or virtually, whether it is the family dinner table, where you strategically bring up an issue and ask people what they think, whether you're a dad or a mom dropping your children to school, and instead of listening to the talk shows or quarreling with them about why they didn't do the homework, you ask them what's going on, or you just shut up and listen to what they're saying to each other, so you begin to understand what is going on in their minds. I think facilitating that, we talk prevention is better than cure. We don't want to get to the aggression and the suicide, etc. What we want to do is help young people, and I'm sure Dave Meyer in particular will agree, critical thinking skills and emotional intelligence.
Definitely.
Being able to step out of the ego and say, okay, here are the pieces. Let me reason it out. Back in my day, and it's a long time ago, we used to have something called intelligence tests. I'm sure a lot of these folks are too young to remember those non-verbal things that you had to do at school, where you connected patterns, etc. You reasoned things through. We've lost
that is lacking now.
Well, that's the point I'm making. We're lacking it. We don't know how to step out of the emotions. So we're all in the feelings. And then, of course, it diverts us. So I really do think one of the ways forward is about facilitating as best we can opportunities for young people to learn how to talk. And it's going to be a challenge because the internet and the virtual relationship is constraining us in a way that is extremely unhealthy at a time when we're living with so many uncertainties, so many moving parts, and people don't know how to handle them. But for us in Jamaica and the Caribbean, if we don't get our act together and learn how to collaborate and coordinate and be strategic in how we design these interventions, we're going to have an even greater problem than we have now. So these four are extremely important, and we need to escalate them.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. But I must add, and I must ask the question, you said engagement. How do we engage the unattached boys, the ones who are riding on the bikes and committing crime? Because they have to become a part of the conversation.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me just
maladaptive behavior.
Let me just jump in with that one, because that one is a challenge, and that is where probably social media is a very big part of it, or popular culture, messaging that is very targeted. That random messaging like respect each other. Who knows what that means? We need to do the research. We need to get the data and target our messaging. Target the guys who are on the bikes. What is it we want them to do differently? The taxi drivers, what do we want them to do differently? Why are they doing what they're doing? You can't start with where you want them to go. You have to understand where they are coming from. So we need more targeted interventions. But let's just be clear. Those folks are the minority. We have to get the center to hold. And if we keep only looking at those who are going over the edge, we'll miss all the ones at the center who are moving and moving, and we're trying to keep that stability. So at-risk young men, very important work. And I have to advocate here and say we are going to have a big problem in the region, because a lot of the work that is done in violence prevention is being funded by USAID and USAID funded programs, and they are being cut. And we are now being at risk because a lot of the young men who would have been helped, and this is across the Caribbean, not around the world, but we are concerned about Jamaica and the Caribbean. This is something we're going to step up. We're going to have to step up the work we are doing together, be more scientific, more database, more strategic, more collaborative, and more importantly, we have to see it as a process. It's not a scattershot. It's like we're trying to get people to move, so we need to understand the change process. And whether it's the unattached youth or the ones who we can reach in our institutions, we have some important work to do. And I really, I'm preaching now because this is what I am concerned about, but I have like a soapbox here, so I'll jump on it.
Okay, Mr. Mary, you?
Yes, I'd like to make one or two additional comments. What I've found with many of our boys, let's talk about the ones that we can reach. I'm not gonna jump to the ones on the back of the bikes at this point in time. I have many parents who may call me and ask me to speak to their son because Mr. Mary, I can't reach him, etc., etc. When I sit down with that young man to talk, I can tell you the commonality of the conversations, all of them, is that my mother or my parents, they don't listen to me. They don't give me the space to talk. And they talk at me. They don't listen to what I feel or what's going on with me. And that's my difficulty. I hear that so much from these boys when you sit down and talk to them. And then, I try and talk to them about what the parent may have said to me, why it is they feel the way they feel. And I said, let's switch places. You become the parent and look at you. How would you feel about what's going on? And many times they'll say yes, or they understand. But I find the whole issue of giving them space to talk is critical, because many of them feel like they don't have a voice in the first place, whether in school or outside of school. Or the teachers tell them what to do, move here, do this, do that, but they do not give them a chance to talk. And so for me, if they come to me, I'm giving them the space. Okay, let me hear what you have to say to me. Talk to me. Let me hear what's going on. What's the problem? How do you feel about this? And the other thing about males not expressing emotion. So even if they feel depressed, whatever inside, we grow them in a way, you need to be strong and look strong, behave strong. Don't cry, don't do all of that. No, I don't believe in that. I'll be in assembly, and I may have had a tragedy in the teaching fraternity or whatever, and tears roll out of my eyes right in front of those boys, and I have no problem crying right in front of them and saying, something, this is how I feel at this point in time. And I'm saying, so what if they see me crying? Nothing's wrong with that. Doesn't take away from me being male. All right. It also says to them, it's okay to cry if you feel that particular way. And I just believe that we need to create a lot more space for boys to be able to talk about what exactly is going on for them. Because here's this. if I shifted those guys on the bike, you know what? We don't give them the space to talk. We don't listen to them, and they find people who listen to them. And that clique who they listen to may not be the group that we want them to be with. And there you go. And I think we just have to create more space for our boys to talk, even if, and I say this too, even if what they're saying to me goes against what I feel and believe, let me hear them out. All right. And I want to ask them, why do you think the way you think? All right. Because if you don't understand them and understand where they're coming from, it's going to be difficult to help them. All right, because as far as they're concerned, you don't understand them, you don't understand what's going on for them, you don't understand what it's about. So, okay, I don't teach me what's going on, so let me understand. I just believe we have to create much more space to allow those boys and those young men who, at least to start with the reachable ones, give them the space to be able to talk to you. And here's the other thing. You know, they have to be comfortable and confident that what they're saying to you is going to remain with you, all right? And they also need to feel comfortable to be able to sit down with you in the first place, all right? And I say kids are very astute, you know. They know when you mean them well or when you're just going through the motions with them as well, all right? And they want to understand that you do genuinely care about their well-being and their welfare, all right, when you're sitting down to talk to them. And they can see when you're very superficial as against when you're genuine. And so you have to mean well, and you have to get them to understand that you care for them and care for their interests. It won't happen overnight, not one or two. And even a classic example, last night a mother called me and said to me that, Mr. Murray, I can't thank you enough, because she used to call me even up to 9, 10 o'clock in the night. I'm crying, Mr. Murray, my son, I just don't know what to do. I bought that boy and sat him down. We had conversations for the same things he's telling me, and we worked with him right through. And now she's coming to me last night to say, Mr. Murray, I can't thank you enough. What's going on for this boy? I'm just so pleased again. I have another one who is an athlete, always having issues. We worked with him, sat him down, listened to him. I said, what's the problem? When he told me what the problem was, again, right back to the same thing. He feels nobody listens to him, nobody understands his views or what's going on for him. This youngster is now in sixth form. He was running last night, and he was calling to find out if I was in the stadium watching him run. I wasn't there. So I said, I saw it online. But you have to create that space that they're comfortable, they feel able to come and talk to you, and then you can move on from there. And, you know, you can't force them to talk about what they don't want to talk about either. You have to let them feel confident and comfortable to be able to open up to you and to talk to you. And I think we just need to create more of that space.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. We are we're up past the time that we should have ended. But the conversation is ongoing and it's quite informative. Again, I'm going to try to invite our audience, if it is that they have questions, comments, before we have closing remarks from our panelists, because we've been on for over an hour and a half, probably we're going up to 2 hours. Andrew, I see Andrew's hand raised. Go ahead, Andrew.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So a quick question. I'm not sure if I've figured out how exactly to articulate it, but just on the point that the previous speaker was speaking about, with regards to how we should, like the narrative about men should not cry and men should not express emotions, how we should do away with that, right? Which I agree with. But I guess the question I'm asking is, there's still a difference between a man and a woman. There's still particular qualities that men should uphold. So where is it? How do we actually instill those masculine qualities within men that does not come at the expense of teaching them to shy away from their emotions? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Mr. Mary, you want to take it?
I was hoping Dr. Weller would take this one.
Mr. Mary, you can't do it every time.
I've never been successful any one of the times, yeah.
All right, let me give it a quick shot. And this is really coming from the work with Karaman over the years. Yeah. This is a very big question, especially in this time.
It is.
Negotiating gender and sexuality and orientation and so on. So it's a good question, it's a big question. I think my first part of the answer is, do you want this person to be a good person or a good man? All right? We're getting back to core values here. And if our starting point is that men and women can be good because they have certain common values, beliefs, and behaviors, then I think it is really important that we always, to me, use that as our reference point. The cultural stereotypes and the socialization part of what a man should be like and a woman should be like, that is something that is, it's a personal choice, really, in terms of what you want to conform to in terms of social norms. But I think what needs to be understood about that is, how do you play that role? So if you say that, okay, everybody must be honest, courageous, authentic, blah, 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 and men should be in charge, how do you do that and still be honest, courageous, respectful, etc.? Because who you're negotiating that power dynamic with has to be something that somebody who's going to agree with you on that. It's not you doing something to them, it's something that you negotiate and agree. So in a household, if you are saying that you believe as a man you should be in charge of certain things, how are you going to negotiate that with a woman who says, I have a better degree than you, I am brighter than you, and I have more money than you? Why are you going to tell me? You're going to have to figure out your own salvation in that. But if you have the core skills, if you have the self-awareness, if you have the communication skills, you are far more likely to negotiate that. And by the same token, Dr. Edwards Carr, when you're talking about your son, you have created that kind of relationship. You set your lines, you have your boundaries, but the value system has to be intact. So two parts to the answer. One, do you want this young man or this young woman to be a good person? What are you doing to teach them those core skills? Are you going to teach them how to use those core skills and critical thinking to now negotiate those gender dynamics that are socialized, but are also, institutionalized in the home with the parents, with the partner, or whoever? I think that to me is part of the answer. It's something that takes a lot of work, and it's going to be different in different cultures, but that would be the way I approach it. So, Mr. Myron, now you can tell us what happens in the real world with the real guys.
Well, I think Dr. Weller summed it up pretty well. It's a complex area, and there's obviously, as Dr. Weller said, there's personal choice. Then it's nearly even trying to unpick what does being a man mean. It may be different things for different persons. If you're talking about those characteristics that men ought to have, and yes, I believe a man can cry and be a man. I believe a man should be opening the door for females. I believe, for example, I always watch when parents and students come to me, and I watch who first comes through the door. Does the young man open the door for his mother, allow his mother in? Does he allow his mother to sit before he sits? All of these things. And if that doesn't happen, I'm going to actually talk to that young man right there and then and said, as a man, there are certain things that we ought to be doing. One, we have to open the door for females, allow them in. Also, you're going to allow your mother to sit before you sit as well. Make sure she's comfortably seated, etc. So it's how you try and teach students things. In fact, for me also, one of the things in growing up, I determined I wasn't going to do certain things I saw my father doing. I was definitely going to shy away from that. I to be honest with you, I can't even recall. I don't recall ever hearing my father saying to me that he loves me in all of my time. And I tell my daughter every day that I love her. Sometimes, even before I say anything, I said, Steph, she said, love you too, daddy. Yeah. So she knows where I'm coming from. So there are things that, I thought you pick up over the time, and this is what you want to be. It's like what Dr. Weller said. Here's the person I want to be. This is what I feel. should be my concept of being a good person and try to live that. And I try to use my own life experiences to actually teach youngsters when I sit down with them. Even an experience I had, my father told me at about age 14 I was going to turn out to be nothing. Yeah, that was his view. You know, that boy, he was talking to my mother actually, said that boy's going to turn out to be nothing. Now, I could have, you know, made that a self-fulfilling prophecy and turn out to be nothing. But I said to myself, I remember saying to my mother, I heard what he said and I'm going to prove him wrong. I lived to see him, you know, and I respected him more, step up and say to me, son, you know, I said certain things about you years ago. You've made me proud. You know, he stood more of as a man for me, having been able to do that. But you know, from that I learned the particular things I will never be doing to my child or saying to my child. And this is the person I want to be. So you know, it's the best I can say, it's a complex one in terms of, but you know, if you've got a solid I say structure behind you, or if the village situation as Dion referred to, that can help you in terms of developing. But I would go with Dr. Weller. The first thing, do you want to be a good person? All right. After all of those traits, everything else packages around that.
Thank you. Thank you. I see two hands. There's a Mojo and a Nadine Davis. We're going to take those comments or questions, and then we will have to go to the panelists for final comments on how we understand, empower, and support as we wrap up in about 3 minutes. I'm giving the panelists to come for final comments on those 3 points. Mr. Mojo or Moto, I saw, wanted to chime in. Not there anymore. Ms. Davis?
Yes. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
A very informative session. This is a parenting issue. And in terms of when parents have separated, I have 2 scenarios. The dynamics is that, would you say mothers are better parents for girls and men are better parents for boys? I know of a situation where the parents separated 3 kids. The first one is a boy, which is, you know, more like the father. The second one is a girl, the middle child is a girl, and the last child is a boy. The separation took place. The eldest child, which is a boy, stayed with the father, and the middle girl and the last child went to live with the mother. However, the father played a significant role in the, you know, in their upbringing and thing. You never look at these kids and on the outside know that they're not from, you know, a home with both parents. The thing that I've noticed, though, that the son who stayed with the father came to university, did well, accelerating, you know, doing well now as an adult. He's supposed to be 20-something, going to 30. The girl, who is the middle child, is now a lawyer. And at the same time, the last son has not achieved academically, who stayed with the mother. So I am wondering to myself if it is that women are better at, when you have a separation, a single parent household, at growing up girls, and the men are good at growing up boys. At the same time, there's another scenario. I know a guy who did not know his father. He grew up with his mother, and yet still he was one of the best. He was a gentleman. These are one of the guys who will open the door for you, let you sit down while he stands, that sort of way. So it's just to say, I don't know if there's any answer for it, but what is your take on it?
Miguel, Mr. Eisen, you want to take that one?
All right. Thank you, Nadine, for that question. Like you have rightly said, the issue is complex. The issue is, unique to the individual as well. But I think we really need both parents. For a child who is whole, we need both parents ideally. If you can't have both parents, you simply want a parent who is supportive of the child's dreams, the child's vision, a parent who will enforce boundaries, a parent who will be friendly without being your friend. So the answer, Nadine, I'm saying in a nutshell is that it is best to have both parents. If you can't, you simply want parents who are supportive of the youngster and will establish boundary that is necessary, will allow them to express their voice. But it is difficult to say that a male parent will be best for raising boys or a female alone. I think from my lens through which I see things, God in his wisdom gave us two parents and we have community as well. We want to have both things in there. All right, so that's what I will say. You can't just say that being a man means that you will raise only boys well. I mean, Dr. Carr, for example, mentioned that her dad did an excellent job raising her, right? And I know in my case, I grew with my mom mainly, and she did a fantastic job. So ideally, you want both parents. If you can't have both parents, you want a parent who is supportive and gives voice to the children.
Thank you.
Okay.
I
Just
hope
to
we.
chime in real quick, not too long on that point. As Mr. Miguel is saying, you need a parent that's supportive. And for me, my mom being in my life, she has supported me all the way. And what she did was in my, I call this the core years of Calabar, meaning say from grade 7 to grade 9. You know, she has really been instrumental in molding me and, you know, training me to, you know, take on my studies and to hold myself accountable. And throughout years of going to grade 10 and 11, it was all me. And that's because she set that foundation early where I knew that, hey, this is what I need to do and I'm going to get it done. So the talk of support is very, very important. They talk about maths and English is the foundation. In grade 7, your parents, their support is an instrumental process in that foundation. So yeah.
And
Your
even
social grouping.
yeah, the thing is
And
that Maxwell, in even probably answering my own question, I'm thinking that there could be an underlying issue because here the mother is an academic and she lectures and all that. I know she's supportive of both kids that she actually had, and the household was extended because the grandmother was present and the grandmother teacher and all of that. So I am beginning to think on wondering if there was a psychological issue that you know, resulted in the last child not to have achieved academically because of some children are affected by the broken home issue, that kind of syndrome, because to the extent where the father blamed the mother for taking him, because apparently he wanted to keep the child. So
Well,
I'm just thinking that it could be an underlying issue and the father blamed the mother now to say, if he was with me, he would have achieved like the other two kids.
Yes, but like Miguel had pointed to, there are a lot of variables that comes to bear on the question that you asked. We talk about personality, we're talking about development of the individual, environment, and all the social factors that come to bear on the outcome. But Garth, can you ask your question in short as we are wrapping up? Mr. Staple?
Yes, definitely. Good evening to everyone on the panel. A nice conversation. I like the direction that has taken and the knowledge being shared. One of the things I have a problem with as a parent is seeing the culture that these youths are now taking on. Something different from when I was growing up. And I don't seem to grasp as to how to really deal with that situation where the youths now are not wearing their pants at the waist. It's either on the hip or at the lower butt. And no matter how you try to talk to the youth about that kind of approach or behavior to life. It seems to fall on deaf ears. Health-wise, it's not, as Dr. Fuller well would have said, that you have to look at life holistically. Health-wise, it's not good. And for your own personal persona out there, it's not sending a positive message either. How do we deal with a situation like this, knowing it's a growing culture in Jamaica and it's not reversing, it's getting broader and broader?
I'm going to take that question. It's an interesting question, but what I'd say is, if we had some youngsters chime into the conversation, their point of view and their perspective would bring some light to all it is that we would have said, because one of our panelists alluded to it, that they like to say that we don't understand them. And in not understanding them, we need to have the conversation, which is a central theme that has come up over and over again in this forum and other forums. And engagement becomes an important part of the solution, and how it is we engage. And the engagement requires a deeper level of understanding, because we are, in their eyes, old people. I like to tell when I encounter them that I am dust and ashes, because the way they frame people over 40 and over 30 as old, and they stress the old, creates a wide divide between us and them in understanding each other. And the pants below the waist and all of that, Jordan and the other panelists would have referred to it, that it's all in upbringing. It's all in, Dr. Eisner spoke of it as well. It is that structure that is created. And if we don't create the structure and engage them and find ways to break that divide between us and them, then we'll have no real solution. I must wrap up here, and I must thank the audience who have stayed with us over the period. And I thank the persons who would have asked questions and commented. And I'm gonna ask our panelists, starting with Mr. Myrie, on the matter of empowerment, understanding, and supporting our young men. How do we move forward from here? And then we'll go to Miguel and go down the line.
Thank you again. To me, there are things we're gonna we need to do on all fronts. I think there's a lot more parenting seminars that we need to be doing to help parents to navigate this difficult area of working with our youngsters. As a school, we try and put some seminars on, nowhere near enough, but I think a lot of that would need to be done, a lot of parenting seminars. As I indicated at the outset, I think we need to be creating more space for our youngsters to be able to sit and talk to us and let us know what is going on. And I think the final thing for me, my comment would be, Dr. Weller indicated earlier on that there's a lot of resources out there that can be used. Many of us don't know these resources at all. And so it needs to be a good sharing of the resources that are out there, so people know where to go, who to call on, what can be done when issues do come up. And I think if we can actually highlight more of those three areas, I think it would help us put us a good way down the road in terms of helping to deal with this problem.
Thank you. Dr. Wello?
Yes.
Closing comment?
Yeah, I think that, this has been a very powerful space. A lot of issues are raised, and we realize how complex it is. But as Mr. Myrie said, there are some things that we can be very targeted about. We can build the capacity for young people for critical thinking and emotional intelligence is important and must be part of the conversation that we're having. creating those spaces in the institutions we have already, but in strategic ways, not just let's have a rap session, but think about who your audience is, get your resources together, get the right facilitator, have somebody live stream it, escalate it. Let's be intentional about what we're trying to do. And let us be very careful that we are listening and learning rather than lecturing and preaching. Absolutely. The lecturing and preaching has to be done strategically. I think that the parenting dynamic is important. I think the workplace is a very critical place. It's where young people enter and for the first time have to experience a kind of discipline that they haven't had before, especially post-COVID. So that is another space in which we need to operate. And I just want to close by saying that, we are in such uncertain times. It's, they say under stress, you regress. And we have to be very careful as individuals, as parents, and as a village that we do not regress to, well, in my day, this is how it must be, because that is going to be so counterproductive. This is a time for us to really collaborate, coordinate, and really address the problems in a way that will help us to get to where we want to get to. And so I want to commend this forum, and I'm happy to be a part of it and look forward to future contributions and learning from my colleagues and the participants as well. So we share all of these perspectives. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Eisen?
Okay. So it was truly good to be here and to get to hear all of the wonderful ideas. I will just share two more before we leave. So one, for me, an important thing is the idea of encouragement and support. We have to be intentional in the way we communicate to our boys. We've mentioned before that boys' egos are fragile. We've got to speak into them words of life. We have to let them know when they do good things, because very often we are prone to ignore boys when they do well. And at the first time they do something bad, we jump on it and we go on and on and on, So we've got to be intentional about encouragement and support. As the Bible says, death and life is in the power of the tongue. We talk about self-fulfilling prophecies. We have to be careful how we speak to our boys. And as parents, sometimes we lose it. When we lose it, we reflect and say, sorry, my bad. I shouldn't have spoken to you that way, And I think our boys will appreciate that when they hear from us that men can apologize too, It's okay to lose it, but when you make a mistake, can you reflect back and say, hey, sorry, my bad. I really should not have spoken to you that way. So when we speak to them words of life, we build in them capacity to be ambitious and to be successful to face life's challenges. So we want to ensure. And finally, there is place in my mind for prayer. And there are things that we can't handle that we think is beyond us. Part of the community is the church. And we reach out and ask for prayer. One of the things that you pray for me, I pray over my son, my daughter daily. And they're awake and they're hearing it, but it's also affirmation of them as to what I hope they will be like. And so it's part of speaking positive words and affirmations into their lives. And so that is important to do that, But yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Mr. Williams? Mr. Williams? Jordan?
Yes, sir. So I share the same sentiment throughout this meeting. It has truly been an honor to be here, sharing my views, and helping to influence, the lives of men, as well as teach parents on how to, handle young men. For me, encouragement and support, as Mr. Miguel said, I feel like that's a very, very big, because one thing is your friend group. Show me your friends and I'll tell you who you are. And I feel like apart from the household, a lot of these young men spend a lot of time at school. And that's where they get the other part of socialization and helping to build their character and their development. So I believe that their friend group, they should choose their friend groups wisely. And for me, I'm speaking from experience because I have an exceptional group of friends, that whenever we need to talk about something, we just, you know, come together and say, hey, this is what's happening. And we give constructive, you know, advice on the topic at hand. And as this generation is saying, my generation, we listen and we don't judge. And it's the same thing here that we have been speaking, creating the space to talk about, you know, topics like that. Handling peer pressure is another one for engagement and support. And in a generation where, you know, technology is very pervasive right now, consuming motivational content, if parents can find content to, you know, let their kids watch, as well as, you know, for young men as well, go out there and look for content that is, you know, inspiring, content that will motivate you to get you out of whatever feeling that you might be going through. I feel like that's very essential, because I myself, I take part in that, you know, listening to podcasts and in general, widening your knowledge. And finally, the 6 P's that have been very instrumental in my life, and that's proper preparation prevents poor performance. And then all of that isn't possible without prayer, which is the final P. So that's proper preparation prevents poor performance. And it's not possible without prayer. Thank you.
That's profound. Thank you so much. The Rose, Dr. Kerr.
All right. So, you know, we've really had a conversation which tried to, this is not something you can package, and this conversation is not finished. It's definitely not finished. We live in a society. There's a broader context within which our children, our young men are growing up, and the society doesn't always see them as assets. And so it's important that, as Mr. Mary spoke about the capacity building for parents, but I hasten to add the capacity building for teachers and other people who work with young men in terms of understanding the developmental process that they're going through, the mind space that Dr. Weller spoke about, understanding where they're coming from, and understanding how they want to position themselves, as Jordan said, and as Miguel says, helping them to figure out who they want to be as a good person. Mr. Mary said the same thing. So in truth and in fact, it's all of us who work with and encounter these young men, children from their very young. How are we responding to them? What are we saying to them? How are we training them? But we ourselves have to be in that place. This is where Mr. Mary started. We ourselves have to be in that mental space where we can recognize that not everything that they do requires an escalation, requires us to, you know, to beat down the hedges. Really and truly, sometimes we just need to ask them, what is that about? You know, where are you coming from with that? And that can open a space and for them to be able to say, you know what, I didn't like what you said to me, and that's why I responded like that. So in truth and in fact, I think all of us adults who work with little boys and big boys and older boys need the capacity development. And I am especially, because this was put on by my dear colleague, Dr. Gentles, Dr. Carol, because she's a teacher educator, this is something we need to begin to look at inside our teachers' colleges, how we prepare our young women, especially who are going into the business of teaching, of how we respond to, how we interact with, how we associate with, how we teach, what methods we use with our young boys. That's it for me.
Thank you. Beautiful. I cannot close without expressing profound gratitude to the Faculty of Humanities and Education, Dr. Gentles and Ms. Stevenson, for organizing events such as these. I learned a lot. I learned quite a lot. Mr. Myrie mentioned that his father made comments about that he's not going to become anything. And I too I've been exposed to that I was told that I was worthless and I'd be nothing. And thank God for prayers and a good support system that has encouraged and has brought me to where I am today. And before I close, I must add that my daughter realized some years ago, 2 years ago, that she said she has a son, and she said that she realized that she was spending a lot of time on her phone, and her son was being neglected. And as such, she decided to pay more attention to him, and his behavior has turned around. So attention and engagement, understanding are some of the takeaways for me from this forum. And I thank the panelists. I thank all of you because you have shared some important information that I hope the audience is benefiting from or will benefit from, and can leave feeling empowered and have a better understanding of the next generation. Thank you so much.
And Mr. Williams, you did an excellent job. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your skills and your talents here. Thank you so much. And thank you, panelists. You've been wonderful. I think we made some excellent choices in whom we asked to participate today. I know some of you we kind of had to pull in, dragging a little bit, but I hope that you enjoyed the session. Thank you very much, everyone. I think it's been a wonderful evening. Have a great rest of the week. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Thanks,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone. Wonderful session.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nadine. Bless up, Jordan. Bless up. Righty. So at this point, I say I'm out of here.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Let me just turn off the